Ok, we are live now. Oi, pessoal. Então, conforme eu tinha prometido, estamos aqui no Facebook com o guitarrista e professor universitário Joe Carter, americano, e um amigo meu de muitos anos atrás. Nos conhecemos aqui no Brasil quando eu tinha uma escola de música, Musearte, e ele deu dois ou três workshops aqui na Musearte. E eu vou fazer essa entrevista em inglês com o Joe, que está nos Estados Unidos. Many people ask if we were going to play together. Muita gente perguntou se a gente ia tocar junto. É que, infelizmente, a internet tem um problema de delay que não permite que a gente toque junto, como vocês sabem, né? Então, fica ruim, o som sai atrasado. Por isso, vai ser uma entrevista com o grande guitarrista Joe Carter. Vou falar inglês. No futuro, em breve, eu pretendo botar novamente, repostar isso com os melhores momentos e com tradução embaixo, tá bom? So, hello, Joe.
Hello.
You're welcome to be in this interview. I thank you very much for taking
Thanks
your
for asking
time
me.
today.
This is wonderful.
Okay, so we met each other a long time ago.
Should we say what year?
No, it, we, it will make us be older, seem
Right.
older
Okay.
than what we really are. So I'm just joking. You can say, what year did you
It was
meet?
1988, and
1988.
my good friend, who has since passed away, Jose Dominguez Rafaele,
Ah, yes,
he
I
said, "I
know.
want to introduce you to my friend. He runs the number one music school. He speaks English wonderfully.
Thank
He
you.
studied at Berkeley. He knows his stuff." So we met and we talked about doing a workshop, and I came and I did a workshop at Music.
Yes. So 1988 was the second year that Musearte was working.
Oh, okay.
But then you came back more than once, maybe?
I came to Brazil. It's got to be a dozen times. So I'm pretty sure I came back to Music again and did a second workshop, maybe a third. Those years, it's so long ago, I don't remember. But I do remember, I think, at least two workshops there.
I agree exactly with your account, with your figures. And uh, I'm not sure if it was twice or three times. So we'll never know because we have the same doubt.
Right.
Okay. So I would like you to start saying a little bit of your history, your story, your resume. What have you done?
So you're asking me.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the other guy who I invited here, that was myself, won't know how to, as a test, won't have these answers
Okay.
unless I have studied previously.
Okay. So the funny thing is, I came to Rio in 1988 for the first time. Besides doing your workshop, I was invited to play at a nightclub that at the time I didn't realize how important this place was. It was People Jazz Bar in Leblon. And I was invited to play for, I want to say, 3 weeks, 5 nights a week. It was wonderful. But I was invited to play jazz because that's what I was. I was a jazz player. I played standards, I played some bebop.
Did you play by yourself or with a group?
The club owner arranged for me to play with two wonderful musicians, both who have since passed away. Bassist Paulo Husso,
Yeah, great.
man, just and
Yeah.
a very sensitive, very funny, a great guy who also studied at Berkeley, um, Claudio Carabe. And that was my trio. And it was great. Uh, um, they were great jazz players in addition to being great musicians, period. And the funny thing was, this trio, we played from, I believe it was 11 p.m. at night to 1 a.m. And then following us was a quintet led by the piano player Luis Essa.
This is true.
At the time, I knew that he wrote some songs, they were in the real book, but I
Yeah,
didn't understand his importance yet.
the most difficult song to analyze in real book. My teachers at Berkeley said, whenever you talk to Luis Essa, tell him how difficult and how beautiful his music is. Please
Well, I have
carry
a
on.
funny story about that because what would happen was
The Dolphin. The
the
song is The Dolphin.
Dolphin. He would come early for his show, and I would stay late. He would ask if he could sit in with my group, and then I would sit in with his group. And this was great. Um, the first time he said, what should we play? And I said, all the things you are, some standard tunes that he knew, and we played them. But then he asked again, what else should we play? And I was feeling very sure of myself, and I had a real book in front of me. And I said, let's play your tune, The Dolphin. He said, okay, sure. And the sax player, Jan Munez, started laughing. And I'm like, what are you laughing about? He said, oh, no, nothing. Let's go. We'll play the tune. So we played The Dolphin. I got like 8 bars into it. And I'm like, oh, man, this tune is hard.
Very hard.
Very hard. And I look over at Jan, and again, he's laughing. Now I understand what he was laughing about. But through Luis Essa, he started telling me, while you're here in Rio, you should go check out this guy or go check out that guy. And my friend Raffaele was doing the same thing. He said, I have some records you should check out, Zimbo Trio, Don Salvador. And I started listening to this stuff, and I fell in love with it. And I started listening to more and more Brazilian music.
Music.
Luis had told me about...
On the spot, because you were here.
I'm sorry?
On the spot, because you were here, right?
Yeah.
So, here. And Flavio Rafael is watching us.
Okay. Okay. So, through Rafael and through Luis Essa, I was introduced to this wonderful music. And I fell in love with it, and it felt very natural to me, especially as a guitar player. So gradually, I started incorporating more and more Brazilian music into my repertoire. And since then, that's what I do. I perform Brazilian jazz and straight ahead jazz, but more Brazilian jazz than anything else.
I know, because if you people, you millions of people who are watching us at the moment, if you go to his page in Facebook, the songs that you will hear is him playing Brazilian music with an acoustic guitar, Brigas Nunca Mais, and others. And it's very good. It's very good that you incorporated this Brazilian soul and playing Brazilian music.
Well, like I said, I fell in love with, but I felt it felt very natural to me to play it. Not that I didn't have to study it. I definitely had to study it and work at it and discover it, because at that time there was no internet. When I would come to Brazil, I would buy as much as I could as far as books. The Almir Shediak books had just started to come out. I grabbed those, and I grabbed whatever I could, and I bought LPs and CDs. And Rafael sent me so much music, so it was something that I studied. And in New York at the time, I'm based in the New York area. There weren't that many Brazilian musicians at that
Really?
time.
What year was that? What year?
Talking about the late 1980s.
Okay.
But again, through Rafael, he said, check out, you should introduce yourself to a couple of people like the Duca da Fonseca, Nilson Mata,
Yeah.
Portinho.
Uh-huh.
And I found these guys, and I talked to them, and I started.
Nana Vasconcelos, did you meet
Yes,
Nana?
yes. So I started playing with them, and they, of course, helped me because, as a novice with the music, there's so many things I didn't understand, and they really showed me how to play the music more authentically, which is what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a jazz player playing Brazilian music. I wanted to play like a Brazilian player.
Because the beat is the rhythm is
Yeah.
different.
Yes.
You can play the chords, right? You can play in your left hand like Brazilians, but the right hand, that's the real secret of playing Brazilian music and bossa nova. Uh,
And you can.
one thing, some people ask me about YouTube. We had a technical problem,
Okay.
so we are only here at Facebook. That's why we are not simultaneously on Facebook. I apologize, but it was out of our hands. But
Yeah.
fortunately, we are here now.
Yeah.
Please go on,
Yeah.
carry on.
Um, I can remember playing with musicians, and it's one thing to play a Jobim tune like a jazz player, and then it's something else to actually play it more authentically. And that's what I was striving for. And that's what I hopefully I do now. I mean, that's what I try to do anyhow.
Yeah, you do, and you do it well,
Well, thank
because that's one of the innovations that João Gilberto brought to Brazilian music, to bossa nova, was the beat.
you. Yeah.
His right hand,
Yeah.
and there is, yeah, and there is this story, because before he came to Rio de Janeiro, people would play bossa nova in a different way, which I'm crazy to meet some of the old bossa nova players, to ask them, Roberto Menescal, I want to meet Menescal and ask him,
Yeah.
Menescal, how did you play bossa nova before João Gilberto? And when he came to Rio, there was a story that they said, everybody, hey, have you seen that guy who just came here in Rio? Have you seen how he played bossa nova? Have you seen his right hand? And everybody would watch him to learn how he did that. And he made kind of a synthesis of bossa nova beats with his right hand. And that became famous here in Rio and in Brazil. And that's what some American jazz players can't do it. The same thing with drummers, you know. There is a way of playing bossa nova in the United States that drummers learn with their teachers or in their school. This is jazz, this is waltz, this is bossa nova, but it's not like how Brazilians play. That's why in many old records of bossa nowadays everybody plays everything. You know, Japanese play chorinho, you know, and you have Japanese in samba school too. But at that days, they would always hire a Brazilian drummer to play drums in bossa nova sessions, because they know that that was the authentic thing. And even excellent American drummers wouldn't play bossa nova as Brazilian drummers would. But as I say, nowadays everybody plays it.
Yeah. I think nowadays with the internet and with YouTube's and with everyone sharing and things like that, um, that situation has changed. But I do remember in the beginning playing with Portinho, wonderful drummer from Rio Grande do Sul.
Mhm.
Um, I think the first time we played, he said to me, he says, "Forget all that Stan Getz stuff. We're gonna do it the right way." And I was like, "Whoa! I thought Stan Getz was the." He says, "We're gonna do it the right way." And of course, he showed me how to do it the right way.
Very
Uh,
good.
so I think the situation has gotten better. But when I was starting out, um, it was hard. It was hard.
I know,
Hard to get
I know.
information. And
I was a musician at that time too. I know how information can be.
yeah, I was talking to people on Facebook, and I said that you're one of the guys. I remember in the late '80s, early '90s, music education in Brazil wasn't where it should be, especially jazz education. And it was you with Musiarte, It was Almir Shediak with his books. It was Antonio Adolfo with his music school. It was important. It seemed to me that it was important for you to bring those concepts that you learned at Berkeley and just through playing, you brought them to Brazil.
That's it. And I'll mention another name too that was Young Guest. Young Guest.
Yeah.
We studied together at Berkeley, and he opened his music school. I opened my music school, and that's what we all did. We brought that concept of functional harmony, because at that time, if you wanted to play jazz here in Brazil,
Yeah.
first you have to learn how to play basic guitar or piano, classical or popular, and then you have to follow your ear, your intuition. And not many people could do it. Some people who were born with a better intuition, with the brain in that area working better, could take it out from records and reproduce. But there wasn't a step by step how to play jazz, how to understand. So we guys that you mentioned, we brought it to Brazil, and I was teaching for 7 years with private students, teaching all these subjects, these issues, and then I decided to open a music school to make it wider.
Yeah.
And so we had at the time 300, 600 students, and now we taught many generations of musicians who are nowadays very famous musicians through our knowledge of Berkeley's functional harmony. And I'm very proud of it. I'm recognized by my old students. They call me when they meet me or they be in touch. And they are great musicians playing with very famous artists in Brazil and abroad. You know, that makes me very proud.
Of course.
Me and my former partners and all the teachers of music art too.
Now, let me ask you this. When you were at Berkeley, I don't know what years you were there, but were you there after Victor Assis Brazil, or were you there at the same time?
I am what some friends of mine said, the second generation. You know, I am the second generation. Victor Assis Brazil, Ancélia Vaz, and some other musicians, Ricardo Silveira, were there before me. I was there in 1978, 79.
Oh, okay.
80. So they were back in Brazil already.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was the second generation there, you know?
Because I understand that Victor Assis was the first Brazilian to study at Berkeley.
Probably.
And I've asked people, and they say, yes, he seemed to be the first one. Harvey S., the bass player, was there at the same time. And he says he doesn't remember anyone else from Brazil being there until Victor got there. And he said everybody wanted to play with him because he was just phenomenal.
Our friend José Stanek is writing here that about Claudio Roditi and Zeca Assunção maybe were there first.
Oh, okay.
He's writing they were in Victor's class.
Okay.
And I was going, before he said that, I was going to say, maybe he was the most famous, but it's possible that some other musician that wasn't that famous was there before. But José Stanek said Claudio Roditi, Zeca Assunção, they were at Victor's class, and they have a quintet there.
Wow.
So that's what he's saying, you know.
That
blame on him, you know, if it's not true. Stanek, if this is not true, I blame on you. Okay?
Well, we're going to assume it is true because he knows his stuff. But that must have been a quintet, boy, those guys playing.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
We were talking, and I would like to say that about Luiz Essa, that he went in my school, my music school, for a workshop. And he has a conversation with José Stanek. It was very, very interesting thing that happened there. Uh, that he was there for a workshop and he said, well, I'm not sure about this, uh, all this stuff from Berkeley, if it's good or not. I always heard there is kind of thing from a massive thing for many people and you don't get. And then José Stanek said something very interesting to Luiz Essa. And the next day, Luiz Essa told me this story. He said the thing. I don't know. He said to me, he was already in a very, very old. He died a couple of years after that. And he said to me, "Are you the owner?" Because I talked to someone yesterday, maybe your partner. Yes. And he said the following thing that I will tell you right now that has to do with Luiz Essa and with Berkeley and the thing that I brought to Brazil. He said to me, I'm this old, and I had a lesson yesterday that changed my mind, my point of view of something that I had in my mind doing all my life. And yesterday I changed this point of view. I said, what is it, Luis? What is it? I didn't like that stuff from Berkeley, and I thought my classes were good. But then José Stanek told me one thing. I never thought about it. That listen, you teach many people and people who already have the intuition of playing music, but there are an army of people who cannot reach by themselves without a step by step. And Berkeley stuff, the lessons they give, the diatonic chords and dominant, secondary dominant, and all that stuff. They give you a step by step, like a manual, how to play jazz, And this make a large number of people, after a while, after trying and studying, being the same level of those people who has the intuition to play that. And he said, I never thought in this point of view. I changed my mind. I changed my opinion about Berkeley. And could you make me a favor? Could you please give me all your material here that you have printed? And of course we did. We sent it to his home, and he started to study and was very. So it's a very interesting story that you remind me now. I remember now, brings me memories of this, and I was amazed with his story and the way, the humble way that he said that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think at some point, Berkeley realized that not everyone coming in is coming in at a certain level. And we need to get a program or curriculum that will take the student from here to there, and then they can go further and further.
Sure.
Not everybody has good ears. Not everybody has great technique. This is one of the things I discovered when I started studying on the college level, that I was behind a lot of students technically. So, and my teacher recognized that. My teacher was a wonderful jazz player, Sal Salvador, and a bebop player. And he checked me out and he realized what it was I needed. And what I needed at that time was technique and sight reading. So that's what we focused on for 2 years straight before we got into improvisation. He said, don't worry about that. We're going to get to that. Or you can work on that, a little bit on your own. But in the lessons, this is what we're going to focus on. And I think that's what, as you said, Berkeley decided, or however it came about, that this is what we need to focus on. We're getting students from around the world, all different levels.
Yeah, and other schools too. José Stanek is saying that this story proves how Luiz Essa was a special person for accepting new ideas, even being a musician recognized all over the world, very famous, and he opened his mind to a new situation.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's very interesting. You are teaching currently in a university, is that right?
Yes.
Sacred Heart University?
Sacred Heart University. It's in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I started out, I want to say 25, 30 years ago, as an instructor. I started out teaching music theory and guitar lessons. And through the years, they asked me to do more and more, and I brought things to the school. And then at some point, they asked me to be director of the music program, and I've been
Oh,
doing that.
really?
Uh,
Congratulations.
Thank you. I've been doing that maybe about 7 years, I think now.
It's a little bit late. My congratulations. But anyway,
Except, and I tried to, and I've as director of the music program, I've tried to bring certain things to the school. One of the things was I instituted several concert series. This is all pre-COVID, but at a certain point, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago, I started a guitar festival. So in the fall, we usually have a guitar festival, and I try to bring in artists from around the world, different styles. Um, but even before that, in the springtime, I started a what I call a Jobim Fest, a concert dedicated just to the music of Antonio Carlos Jobim,
uh,
and that has become very popular. And in addition to those two series, I try to bring in artists whenever we can, the program can afford it. And I've brought in some great people. This last semester, I was able to bring in one of my favorite Brazilian guitar players, Marcelo Gonçalves. He came with Anat Cohen, and they did their duo, which I just adore. I just love. So wonderful to present them in concert and to chat with him. He doesn't talk a lot, Marcel, but we were able to chat, and it was great. So I'm proud that I'm able to do things like that within the music program, in addition to offering whatever courses we have. At some point, I brought in a jazz history class. At some point, I brought in the music of Latin America, where I deal with Cuban music and Brazilian music. So the music program, I think, is pretty happening in my humble opinion. I think we got some great things going on. And in addition to that, we teach private lessons on just about any instrument you could think of. So,
very good, very good. And you're playing nowadays in a place that you always go, or you are making different gigs in different places? How is your? I mean, before the pandemic, of course. You no.
um, I've been, years ago, I was focusing on trying to get gigs in New York, and I got some gigs in. But I would say the last 5 years or so, I've been focusing on concerts.
Oh,
Um, in my area, outside my area, wherever it might happen. And
and where are you living nowadays?
I'm
So the
living in
people.
Connecticut, which is about 60 miles outside of Manhattan, New York City. So I'm still pretty close, but I'm outside the ring a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, and I play with different musicians. If I'm called to do something, I might put together a trio. My favorite format has always been duo. So I might do duo with a bass player. There's a wonderful flute player that I play with, Ali Ryerson. We have a guitar flute duo.
Mhm.
But sometimes I'll do trio. Before COVID, I think one of the last concerts I did was with Nielsen Mata on bass and
Oh,
another Brazilian drummer, Graciliano Zambonin. So I try to, I have a group of musicians that I pull from when a gig opportunity comes up.
very good. Well, this conversation is attracting many people, many who are not musicians, because I can read here their messages. But some of the musicians, I would like to make a question to you, to
Hmm.
ask you a question about something specific. I'm nowadays into online courses, and I am teaching specifically a subject that is chord patterns
Oh,
and 2/5 progressions and
mm,
1/6 2/5. So I made a whole course around how to take music by ear, knowing those patterns. I always tell them that this story that I won't take too long to tell. My first job in Brazil, I told you this story the other day. My first job in Brazil, I came from Berkeley, so I came with an excellent chord reading, a very good line reading. That it's rare here in Brazil, guitar players who can read notes, and improvising well, very well, well enough. And my first job, I came here and they invite me. I was going to substitute another guitar player who was there for many years and was going to do television. So they called me to play in this gig. And when I arrived there, I asked, like very innocent way, where are the parts? And I said, there is no parts here, it's all by ear. So I completely was lost, completely lost. I screwed it up. I couldn't play anything. And on the second set, the guitar player, the, the one who played there, went up the stage. I sat down and I looked at him playing all by ear, making line. He wasn't even making chords anymore. He was making internal lines. He
Yeah.
knew the chords and he could play with. And I thought, wow, what is this? So the other day I went there. I recorded. It was the old time, okay, with the cassette,
Hmm.
4 tapes of 120 minutes each. Then I went home. It was Carnival, 10 days of vacations here in Brazil, and I studied night and day all those songs. I took it them by ear, and then I noticed that it wasn't that I wasn't just knowing them by heart. I could relate them to those chord patterns, and so I understood that people who wasn't trained to play music by ear, hearing it the first time, could use chord patterns to help them. So if this is a D minor and a C major, probably there will be a G7. If this is a G7, probably there will be a C major 7 or an E minor 7. And this helped me. And then suddenly I was playing good. I was fired from that job. But a few time later, I was hired in a much better job. There was Canecão here in Rio, a big house, show house, and that where Roberto Carlos, Maria Bethânia, we used to play, and there was here the show of Elis Regina. And so before the big show, they opened a small stage where we used to play for people to dance and to drink. And after the show, we play again. And in my audition, the guy who made the audition, the keyboard said, "You are very good at playing by ear, and there are no guitar players they are coming here, but they don't play good. You are very good." And I thought, if I was here a month ago, you wouldn't say that. So my question is, how do you relate to how chord patterns help you in your music and in your playing nowadays?
This is very important. Um, in what we call Western music, we have these patterns. A two chord usually goes to a five chord, usually goes to a one chord. And if you're dealing with jazz standard tunes, the composers have a template. It's a 32 bar tune, and it might be an A section followed by an A section, then a B section, an A section. So you have little clues sometimes, as you said, if you're trying to play by ear. When I first started playing in New York, I was being called by different musicians to accompany them, and sax players, trumpet players, whatever it might be. And I tried to prepare myself. I tried to learn as many standard tunes as possible. But it's hard. It's hard to memorize tunes. It's hard to remember them if you're not playing them all the time. But I had a call from a well-known sax player. His name was Junior Cook, who was a great hard bop player. He was played with Horace Silver and the Jazz Messengers. He led his own group, and he had a gig, and I got called for it. I'm not sure why I got called, but I got called for it. And there was no piano player. It was Junior on sax, guitar, bass, drums, and vibes. And we started playing, and Junior wouldn't call the name of the tune. He'd just start playing. He wouldn't tell you what key he was in. He wouldn't tell you what tune, and you had to hear what was going on. And on that gig, which was a hard gig, but I started to realize that there's these patterns, 2-5-1. I realized that I'm going to grab my guitar. Sometimes I can illustrate better. I realized that most standard tunes are going to start either on a 1 chord or they're going to start on a 2 chord. Maybe sometimes, like Just Friends, it starts on a 4 chord, but most times it's a 2 chord or a 1 chord. And what I realized,
starts on 2.
what I realized is that I worked backwards. In other words, the end of the tune is going to wind up on a 1 chord. So what's going to come before that 1 chord? Probably a 5 chord. And what's going to come before that? Probably a 2 chord. So if I have the ending and I have the beginning, I know it's a 2 or a 1 chord. It's that middle that has to be filled in. I could sort of hear that. So playing with Junior, I got to figure out how to do that. But standards are all about these patterns, as you say, a 1-6-2-5 or a 2-5-1. Once you recognize that, that makes things a little easier. Now, when I started to study Brazilian music, besides Jobim and the Bossa Nova guys, I started getting into the samba canción composers, Noel Rosa, Eri Barroso. And I realized, first of all, that they were composing the same time period as North American composers, Cole Porter, Jerome Kern, Irving Berlin. And they're using the same 32-bar template, what we call the European song form. It could be AABA, it could be ABAC, but it's usually 32 bars. And then once I started studying their music, and so on, I realized it's the same patterns. It's 2-5-1s, it's 1-6-2-5, it's all that, it's, that sort of stuff. So knowing that, understanding that is going to help you when you're playing Western music, whether it's coming from North America or South America. So with my students, I make sure that everybody knows their 2-5-1 progressions in every key. And I make sure they know them in different positions. I tell them, make sure you know 2-5-1 starting with the bass note on the 6th string. But also know them same key with bass notes starting on the 5th string. And so on. Maybe even bass notes starting on the 4th string. Know all the variations. If you know that, that's a good starting point.
I'm laughing because that's exactly what I teach my students.
Okay, it's a universal thing, I think. With this, you have to know these progressions, and you have to know them in different places. You can't just move your hand up. There you go, right there. Exactly. So I hope that answers your question. That is vital, knowing these patterns.
That answers my question. That answers many people's questions.
Okay.
And in that job that I didn't get because I was very bad, the only thing I could play was the 1 chord in the beginning and the final 2-5-1.
Right.
There was a little part missing.
Yeah.
There were like 30 or 29 bars missing.
Well, that's what my teacher used to tell me. Sal used to say, any gig you do, whether it's a good gig or a bad gig, you're going to learn something from it. So even you get to a gig and you realize, oh, I don't know this, I need to go home and work on this, then that's a good thing.
Sal Salvador was an excellent guitar player.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I just heard his music only a few years ago, and I was really impressed with the way he plays a top musician. He used to play top musician, so you had a very good and excellent guitar teacher.
Yeah, I was fortunate. I was fortunate because he was a good performer, but he was also a good teacher. He's someone who sat down and realized, okay, I need to teach this or that or this. And he would take you on as a student, and he would more or less analyze what it is was missing, what it is you needed. As a player, he wasn't as famous as some of his contemporaries like Hal Farlow or Jimmy Rainey, but he was on that same level.
Oh,
And the one thing one of the main things I remember about Sal is he could swing, and that's something that's lost in my opinion. This idea of being able to swing. I try to impart that on my students sometimes, but it's hard in this time period because there's so much music. Jazz has it has widened up as far as the palette of colors. But what's essential, in my opinion, is this idea of being able to swing. You don't have to play fast, but swing.
I was watching a couple of weeks ago a documentary about the Blue Note Records
Yeah.
label. And it was telling about the owners that they were not musicians, but they were a link between musicians, mainly black musicians who at the time weren't very valorized, they didn't give much attention. And what the musicians said, like Herbie Hancock and others,
Yeah.
they said that they could, when they hear something, and they would think it was good and they would hire the professionals, the musicians, if they were swinging. And when one of the guys, I think one of them was from Germany or from Austria, I don't remember. When he was like dancing, like with little steps, they knew they were approved.
That it was happening. Yeah.
Okay, you were hired because exactly this point that you're saying, the band has to swing. Otherwise, you can be very good, very fast, and if you don't swing, it won't call the attention of the audience. Because even those who are not musicians, they have the feeling and things are really good or not.
Yeah. Yeah. The average listener, whether it's a musician or not, could sense when it's swinging or not swinging. They might not say, "Oh, it's they're." They might not be able to put into words what's wrong,
Sure.
but they understand that something's not quite right.
Intuition, in
Yeah,
their intuition.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very good, very
I mean,
good.
I always enjoyed fast players for a few moments, but then it gets tired. For my years, I'm tired of it very quickly. It's the guys who would create a melody when they improvise, whether it was Chet Baker or Art Farmer or Bill Evans or Jim Hall. Those were people who were more interesting to me to listen to when I was
Yes.
learning about this.
And I'll tell you one little story too. A very famous guitar player, international guitar player, came to Brazil for a concert, and I went to see him. And I was very impressed with his albums. And the first song he played in his solo, he started to play fast. And I noticed that in the nightclub that we were, there was probably a group of guitar players. What a bunch. And then when he started to play fast, they all applauded and woo! I think he got carried away, you know. And all his solos were fast.
Yeah.
So after the third tune, I left because I was tired to see the guy playing. Okay, first time, second song, a ballad. Okay,
Yeah, right.
I said, okay. Then I turned to a friend. I'm going home. I'm not feeling very well, and I was really upset, disappointed, because I expected, besides all the technique, here's some feelings, some things that come from the heart. You have many famous, marvelous guitar players, like Eric Clapton or Santana, that they play fast, but it's not their cup of tea. And they play with feeling, and sometimes one or two notes played with feeling touches your heart, and listeners who are not musicians more than a scale that you play at 1,000 miles per hour.
Yeah. It's choosing the right notes. I mean, that's what BB King said. I'm going to play three notes, but they're going to be the right notes. And whether you're a musician or non-musician, you recognize, yeah, those are the right three notes at that moment in that song. You don't need 20 others to link those three notes. It's just
and to touch people's hearts.
Yeah.
And to touch people's hearts.
Yeah.
That's very good. Well, Joe, it's very nice talking to you. It's been an hour, almost an hour.
No way. We just started. It was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's an hour. And
well, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Could I come back another time? Because I got a lot more to say.
Listen, I was going to invite you to ask the same thing.
Okay.
But you draw faster than me, you know. Quick draw, must draw, you know. I was going, and I would like to invite you again.
I'd love
very soon, and so that we can continue our conversation.
That would be wonderful.
And I would like to thank you very, very, very much for being so kind and so generous to share your stories.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And I just like to, I always like to acknowledge certain people in my life who have helped me, especially with Brazilian music. You have.
Thank you.
Luis Essa. At the top of the list, my dear, dear friend, Jose Dominguez Rafaeli. He was my mentor. And he had such exquisite taste. He said, check out Zimbo Trio, check out Don Salvador, whoever it might be. He was always right. So there have been people who have helped me in my Brazilian music education, and you're one of them. And I just like to say thanks.
And Rafaeli he helped us very much with Musiarte, spontaneously, because he was supporting something that was into jazz. And I never seen a person who knows more about jazz history.
It's amazing.
He was an encyclopedia, you know.
Yes.
He knew everything, every year, every album, and he was a very nice and generous person, you know.
Generous is the key word. Generous.
Yes, that's it. And we have many friends here saying we must do it again. Amazing maestros. Thank you, Eduardo Ponte, who is an excellent guitar player. And I hope we can talk to each other very soon here.
Let's do it again. Let's do it again. And hopefully when
the pandemic
gets back to somewhat normal, maybe we can play. Maybe I can come there. You can come here. We could do something. Because that's the key music, you know, playing live music.
And also, if the new technology in all these moments allow us to play together in the same time, the same tempo, without that delay, maybe we can play together online, you know?
I think this is coming. And I think the person who can figure out how to compensate for the delay is going to make a lot of money, because we see musicians want to be able to play. Musicians who are separated by distance want to be able to play together online.
Well, if you think they're going to make a lot of money, maybe the two of us could start to study how to figure it out.
Unfortunately, it's beyond me. I have no clue, but
me too. I'm just kidding.
Of course.
Okay, Joe, so I'm ending the broadcast now.
Okay.
Again, thank you very much, and see you next time.
Next time. All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.